Hi guys, my name is Mrs. Thorne and I'm here to talk to you guys about education. And I don't know, maybe some of you guys are interested in becoming teachers someday, or have an interest in following that path. So I'm going to kind of start out and tell you just a little bit about myself. I am a teacher. I have taught or been in education for over 20 years. I started out as a teacher's aide. I was a special ed teacher for deaf education. I have a big interest in math and science and English, and worked at the elementary. Currently, I am at Region 9 Education Service Center, and I work supporting partnerships between childcare and pre-K classes. So it's really exciting stuff. But moving into education, there might be a lot of questions that you guys have that you might want to ask. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen over here. I have a PowerPoint presentation, but I want to start by kind of getting you thinking about, do you want to become a teacher? What would it be like to be a teacher? What do I need to do to become a teacher? So we're going to look at that here in just a second. Perfect. So the first thing I kind of want you to do is I want you just to take a second and think. What would be some of the best reasons you can think of to become a teacher? What about teaching and education kind of inspires you? So we're going to talk about this in a second at the end of my little 20-minute presentation, but I want you to be thinking, is that something I could do or something I want to do, and why? So jot that down really fast, and while you're writing that down, I'm going to shift back here and we're going to talk about it. Okay, let me see if I can move the camera back that direction too. No?
No, because we're sharing the screen.
Oh. Okay, so hopefully you've had just a second to think about that. I'm going to move this on my screen just a little bit. So have you thought about it? Have you written down some reasons why you might want to go into education? Let's see if any of these are them. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about why I became a teacher, because I think everybody's reason why they choose a career path is different. But for me, the reason I became a teacher is my mother was a teacher. And so I saw all the great things that she did with her students, and often she was at the elementary level, and often I even got to go in and help her. I got to help to create her room and set things up. When I played with my friends as a child, I was always the teacher. I enjoyed playing school. So it was just something I always knew I wanted to become. But I don't think that happens for everybody. So if education is something that interests you, why? What is it that you look at that makes you want to go that direction? Is it a special teacher that you had somewhere in your education? Maybe it's a teacher you work with now that kind of excites you and makes education exciting for you. Another question you may be asking, do I need to go to college to become a teacher? How much more education beyond high school do I need to look at getting to become a teacher? And that varies, but we're going to talk about some of that. So you will need your college education, and generally it's an average of 4 years, depending on your desired certification in education. All states in the United States do require you to have a license to teach. So that's one thing to be thoughtful of. It's kind of important. But this also means that you need a bachelor's degree from an accredited teacher training program. And that means an official teacher training program. And generally speaking, a bachelor's degree is about 4 years. Some people can do it a little bit faster, and it takes some people a little bit longer, and that's okay. But you'll need that 4-year line of education. You can choose several different paths in education. You can choose elementary. Generally speaking, that's kind of pre-K through 5th, sometimes 6th grade. Secondary, it kind of moves up from there. And depending again, what maybe your passion is it math, reading, science, PE, music, art? And you can go down the path of special education as well. So those are things to consider when you're kind of taking and planning your college career. You will need certification, and that certification, like I said, you'll have to get a general teaching certification, and that just means that you are licensed to teach. But then beyond that, depending on what your specialized skill is, you will need that specific content certification, and that could be PE, that could be reading, 4th through 8th grade. That could be math, kinder through 6th. I mean, it could be high school science. So again, depending on what it is you are looking at, you will need to take content tests in order to teach that subject level. So see, teachers have to do a lot of testing too. It's not just you guys. We get it. When you guys are having to test and benchmark, we get it. We've had to do it too. We're right there with you. Another consideration you might be thinking about as you're planning, do I want to teach? How much money do teachers make? I'm going to be really honest with you, teachers don't make the most money. I think doctors and lawyers maybe are kind of up there, and there's other careers, technology. But depending on the path that you choose, your pay scale will kind of reflect that. Now, generally speaking, secondary teachers make a little bit more money than elementary teachers. And the median annual scale, salary scale for teachers across the country, and the kind of middle, the average, is about $55,000, almost $56,000 a year, which kind of boils down to about $26.82 an hour if you look at it that way. The top 10% annual salary for teachers is about $95,380, which is really good. But I promise you, those teachers are the ones who have continued on their education. You might be calling them Dr. So-and-so. Maybe they have a specialized skill in education, or they've been there for a really long time. The bottom 10% is $39,080, which averages about to $18.79 an hour. And it, again, depends on the district you work for, what city, what town, what state. So that's just an average range. So again, that's something to consider. But we'll talk about what the schedule of a teacher is, and that might kind of help decide some of those paths that you might look at taking. So you might consider the work environment. Your work environment as a teacher, it varies depending on, again, what level you teach, what class you teach, what subject level you teach. But generally speaking, most teachers have their own classroom, or they share a classroom with maybe one other teacher or two other teachers, and you can decorate your classroom to match your taste. You can definitely create a classroom environment that you think is going to make your students feel welcome and engage in learning. Generally speaking, your classroom will also be centered around your subject. So think a second about some of your favorite teachers. What was it? Was it the environment that you sat in that made them amazing? Or was it who they were that made it amazing? Or a combination of the two? Secondary teachers generally teach one or two courses or subject areas. It depends, again, on their content and their certifications. But lots of times you will find your math teachers on the secondary level teach maybe basic algebra, and then maybe they're teaching algebra 2 also, or just different levels of the same topic. And that goes with reading or science as well. But lots of times what you'll find is those teachers are teaching the same courses over and over throughout the day, and with colleagues sometimes up to 120 students a day. So secondary teachers really, really work hard to meet the needs of many, many, many students in one day. Elementary teachers, on the other hand, generally work with the same group of students. You remember, when you're in elementary, you usually had maybe through pre-K through 2nd grade, you had the same teacher you were with all day. And so elementary teachers, whereas they generally work with maybe up to 25 students max, usually a day, they're teaching all core subjects. So they have a smaller student load, but they're also teaching the math and the reading and the science. So you kind of have to think which one might be important to you. What would you rather do? Your upper elementary, 3rd through 6th grade, those teachers generally will focus on one subject and teach it many times to different groups of kids, but they're not looking at the same 120 students that maybe your junior high and high school teachers are. So that might be why those secondary teachers make a little bit more money. Just saying, I don't know. All right, so that's your work environment. Let's go back to that a second. Let's talk about the schedule of a teacher. So your work schedule, and I'm going to say this is generally speaking, I bet you have a lot of teachers sitting near you going, oh, I work a lot more than that. I know you do, especially right now. But your work day usually starts between 7 and 8 a.m. I bet they get there much earlier than that, but it usually starts between 7 and 8 a.m. when students start arriving. Dismissal of your students usually happens between 3 and 4 p.m. and teachers are generally working later than that, usually 5-ish, because they've got to get home to their own families, preparing for the next day's lesson. One perk that I found as a teacher, especially as a mother, is I worked an average of 10 months a year. So when we looked at that annual salary a minute ago, that was what I got paid for the whole year, and they would split that across 12 months. So whereas I would be working approximately 10 months and I would have my summer breaks, I was still getting paid during those summer breaks. So that's kind of, I considered to be a perk. Teachers, I also was able to have the same holidays off as my children. So that is a perk in that schedule. Oh, let's talk about, I keep skipping that slide. Let me go back. I apologize. Some of the work duties of teachers. So we talked about the schedule and what that could look like, but here's some of the things that you are doing during your day. So you might kind of be aware of, these are the things your teachers are doing when they're not with you specifically. So they have to have a knowledge of the benchmarks and state standards. And I don't know if you knew this or not, but your math and your reading have very specific standards that your teachers have to teach you in order for you to be successful and move on to the next grade. So they have to be very knowledgeable on that. You create lesson plans. And interestingly, your lesson plans are not created for you when you become a teacher. You have to go in there and be very creative with that. They assess student work, they do group work, they work one-on-one with students, and they oftentimes have to meet with parents. So aside from the time they are spending with you guys as students, these are the other things your teachers, probably many more than this as well. What kinds of skills do I need to have or develop to be a good teacher? So teachers have to have verbal skills. They need to be able to effectively communicate with students, colleagues, and parents. It's important that teachers are able to communicate the lessons as well as their expectations are from you. And they need to also have good listening skills. So whereas they're teaching stuff to you, they need to be able to listen to your needs, your learning needs, or social emotional needs as a student. They need to have patience. We all learn differently, and teachers definitely acknowledge that, and they know that you learn at different rates. So they have to have patience in order to meet your needs the best way. Critical thinking skills are essential for teachers. They need to be able to analyze their own lesson plans in order to reach all students, as well as being able to think on the dot. Like they need to be able to adjust their lessons in the moment to meet the needs of all students. And most importantly, they need to have a passion for learning. So if that is you, someone who has a passion for learning, you love learning and helping students to love you and you want to help students love learning. Teaching is definitely something you might think about getting into. You would be surprised how many times you go home at the end of your day and you know that you've made a difference in the lives of many kiddos. And for, I think most teachers, that's one of the reasons we do it. So then you might ask, oh gosh, what kind of teacher can I be? And really, like this list is limitless. You know, is it English? Do you enjoy reading? Do you enjoy writing? I would follow your gut. What speaks to you? What lessons do you feel that you are exceptional at? What is it maybe that you struggle with that you enjoy learning? For me, that was math. Math did not come easy to me in school. But as I got older, I learned to appreciate the ability to figure out problems. They became like puzzles to me. So I ended up becoming a math coach. Is it Spanish, music, PE, art, science? What is it that kind of makes you excited about school? Maybe that's where you'd like to start in education. I think beyond teaching, you get in it for maybe reaching students and at a classroom level, but you can take that even farther. You can go back and get your master's, which is usually 2 more years or a year and a half of college, and you can be a specialist in curriculum or administration. Maybe you aspire to be a principal or a campus or a district administrator or superintendent. I mean, you can do a lot of things when you get into education. So I want to take a minute, let's circle back around to my first question. I kind of started by asking you, what about teaching interests you? Why would you want to teach? What do you want to teach? So did you have a minute to kind of think about that? What would be some of the best reasons you can think of to become a teacher? So
What are the best and worst parts of this career?
the best and worst parts of this career. That's a really tough question. And I think that probably varies from year to year, sometimes day to day. I think for me, the best parts were watching students that I taught when they were in pre-K. I worked with a group of students that I actually stayed with through 6th grade, and I now see them graduating from high school and making college plans, and it's very rewarding to me because I know that I played a part in their future. So that for me is the best. The worst is probably feeling like I can't make a difference for everybody. That's the worst. It's hard. You want everybody to be successful, and so maybe that's it.
Where are some of the colleges that we can go to?
Oh gosh, I think that most colleges have education programs. I think MSU has a fantastic, that's right here in Wichita Falls. Lubbock has a great college, Texas State. I mean, I think that probably any of your colleges are a great place to start. And I want to point out too, that maybe you started out and you got your 4-year degree in something different than education. You thought maybe you wanted to be, I don't know, a police officer, and you went to college, so you would start out higher up on the force, but maybe you changed your path and you want to be a teacher. You can also get an alternative teacher certification, so you don't have to go back and start all over. So there are options if becoming a teacher later in life interests you.
Who makes more money, coaches or teachers? And what college degree would you recommend for someone who is looking for a career of coaching and teaching?
Okay, so I really don't know the answer to who makes more. I could take a guess. And so maybe some of your coaches, if you can look around the room, if you know any of them, I'm betting that coaches probably make a little bit more money than your average teacher. But there's a reason for that. Coaches not only have to teach all day long, because most of your coaches, as you know, they are actually teaching a content as well. And then they're having to make sure you are prepared for whatever sport is you're doing. There's a lot of planning that goes along with that. So they are working hard for their money. But also, what was the question? The second part of that question?
I took it off.
Oh, I apologize. I think it might have been,
Let me see.
what, oh, I'm sorry. I didn't.
It was, what college degree would you recommend for someone who is looking for a career of coaching and teaching?
So for coaching, I think there's a kinesthetic degree, and that's like physical education. I think that they're very specific, and you still have to kind of take a lot of those teaching classes. But as you are finishing up and rounding out and making those decisions of what kind of education you want to go into, kinesthetic or physical education is a point. And there might be more specific if you're into football or basketball or baseball. I apologize. I don't know exactly, but I know that physical education is a big piece of that.
What age do you need to be to become a teacher?
Well, I don't think it matters what age you are. I think once you finish your college degree and your certification courses, you are then ready to be a teacher. So I think as early as, I don't know, 20, if you were to finish that course that fast. I did not become a teacher till much later in life. I stayed home and raised my kids instead. So at any point, you could become a teacher once you finish your degree and certification.
How much does a beginning teacher earn?
A beginning teacher, looking at that median scale that we looked at, or that average scale that we looked at, that would kind of be, I would guess most first-year teachers probably start in the range of about $40,000-ish It varies, again, depending on the city or state that you're in.
And that probably goes along with what is the earning potential for this career field?
I think the earning potential, as I said, the top 10% is $95,000. I think depending on how far you go in education will be how much you earn. You guys, thanks for joining me today. It was a lot of fun.